Of Kittens and Broken Things. Chapter 5.
Saren was dead and Garrus was swamped with offers. As a companion of the savior of the Citadel, he was front and center in the fight to make the hierarchy relevant. He was enjoying that Counselor Sparatus was in a defensive splutter. Sparatus would happily put Garrus in a jettison capsule and lose the coordinates, but he would be the primary suspect in Garrus's murder. His father had not approved of Garrus taking off with a human spectre, but now he was pride and grandfathered in approval. Tensor Vicarium would not allow any loss of coordinates. Sparatus knew and Garrus knew that he was the only Turian that had been present through every discussion in person that Shepard had with the Council. Beyond that, Garrus was privy to Shepard's accounts of the contents of their directives and orders. Garrus was aware of the greatest failing in Sparatus's career. If Garrus had anything to say about it, he'd dig up more. Turians deserved better. The Vicarian name, recent events, personal reputation, military service, and C-Sec service made Garrus visible. Garrus considered his options, which included using his newly found fame and frustration with Shepard's reception to accuse the Council of everything he wanted to accuse them of. Conspiracy to deny the case against Saren, condemning Ashley Williams to death, and damning Shepard with faint praise. Shepard herself was absent from the frenzy of the rebuilding of the Citadel. She did not do live interviews or appearances. She deferred all issues to Anderson, the new human counselor, only answered certain questions, and geared every opportunity to speak into asking people to work together, honor those who had given their lives, and prepare for a coming fight. She was calm and quiet enough to bore most people. She no doubt liked it that way. The immediacy of the end of their potential lives had passed, and the courage to knock on her door faded when she did not knock on his. He knew she had faith in him. She'd expressed that she wanted him to get his own command, and he wanted that for himself as well to repay her faith in him. He saw so much wrong with the hierarchy, C-Sec, the Council in general, and the Turian Counselor specifically, and at this moment in history he could do something about it. He had the ear of the media, support of many individuals in the military and C-Sec, if not support of all of their leaders. He had his father's good opinion because the ends justified the means, and now his son was being sensible and looking after his own people, his own future. He wanted to look out for Turian interests, protect them in the inevitable storm, and it seemed that in this moment in history, his people might look after him as well. Even if they didn't, even if they disagreed, he'd learned from Shepard to persevere, to not take it personally, and to keep the goal in mind, not the obstacle. He owed it to her to step out of the shadow, fight his own fight, lead, and make changes from the inside of the Citadel's most ossified political structures. He was making inroads on sorting through his personal ambitions, ultimate goals, and how that would align with the offers he'd gotten. No thanks to some of them. He would not be a spokesman for Carnifex. He would not be a consultant on the next Blastofilm. He had gotten an Omni-Tool alert from Shepard.
Hypothetically speaking, given 3 dream jobs, Executor, Counselor, or Spectre, which would you want?
He had smiled, assumed it was a joke, and answered, "I love the sound of Executor Vicarian." He did. It's just that mostly he liked the sound of not Executor Palin. He had hoped it would lead into a conversation with her. He wanted to talk to her. Ideally, he'd like to see her. He checked his Omni-Tool frequently, looking for missed follow-up alerts, and he was disappointed when he never heard back from her. Straighten your fringe, Vicarian. She has more important things to do. About a week and a half later, he got a visit from Counselor Anderson. Garrus stared at him for a moment until Anderson said,
"Pardon me for intruding. If you aren't busy, may I come in?"
Startled and stepping back quickly, door banging out of his grip and then caught before it hit Anderson in the face, Garrus said, "Not at all, please. Sorry about that. Come in." Anderson admired his modest apartment before displaying an Omni-Tool screen that said in Turian script, "Is this place potentially bugged?" Garrus shook his head and said, "People have tried. I've caught a few. I leave them in place and play Elcor opera into them for a while. Right now I'm pretty sure you're clear. But if you're worried..." Garrus set up a local field centered around his Omni-Tool, a Mass Effect dome, and a sound generator. Inside would be silent. Outside would not be. Don't step outside this perimeter if you value your ears. What brings you here?" Anderson looked at the bright circle of blue on the ground and then redirected his attention back to Garrus.
"Shepard asked me to talk to you. She asked me to tell you she'd be here herself, but she doesn't want her current questionable status to affect your prospects."
That made Garrus angry, but he nodded with a slight jut of his jaw, seeing no point in arguing it with Anderson. Wait, he did. He'd argue it with anybody, so he did. "I suppose that's just as well. If she were here and said that to me, I'd have to argue with her. I have only ever benefited from association with her, and I believe that to be a truth that won't respond to public opinion." Anderson smiled.
"Good. I'm glad to hear it. We need more truths that don't respond to or manipulate public opinion." She is, in her words, being cautious. She also thought you might say something like that and told me to tell you to pipe down, but I believe I will not need to do that.
Garrus leaned back more comfortably in his chair. It was kind of like a conversation with her, and he was flattered she was thinking of him. Enough to involve the Earth Counselor on a stealth mission. More than enough to make Garrus realize how much her opinion mattered, how much he missed her. It was hero worship, sure, but all good Turians were raised to appreciate hero worship. It wasn't just her as a hero, it was her. Well, if he was in deep, it was for a good cause. The best cause.
First, let me convey my personal thanks for what you've done. Interviews where you've supported her and my addition to the Council. It makes a difference that it's from someone that risked their life along with her against the Council's orders. Shepard said you were interested in the position of executor.
Well, yeah, she asked me in the middle of the night what my dream job was, and I thought executor vicarium would be the most spiteful.
Do you want it or not?
What? Do I want what? You can't...
I believe we can. We can. If you want it. She wanted me to clarify, to make sure you didn't want Spectre or Counselor. She seems adamant about making sure you land on both feet. She specified anybody's feet he wants to land on. Sparatus, Palin, there should be 2 empty Spectre spots.
Garrus laughed and thought about it more seriously. So she's working on the Spectre and Counselor plans?
Yes. Palin is the easiest, and I can outline that right now. The rest might take a little while, but Spectre would be the second easiest. Counselor hardest, but not impossible. I could use you on the Council.
Garrus's brow plates drew tight together. She's serious.
Yes, she's serious.
And you're serious?
I am. Palin has lost a great deal of support. CSEC is being restructured after the attack. There was loss of life from those who died in the attack, and attrition from those who became disillusioned with their leadership in the face of our accounts of the Council's orders and CSEC's inability to enforce an investigation. They could use the morale and confidence boost of you being in charge. It would be best for the Citadel, best for Turians, best for the hierarchy, she thinks. She wants to be sure it's best for you. She said you have some reform ambitions. I believe they're needed. She believes that if we bring private pressure to bear, we can get Palin to resign and give the position to you. As straight and narrow as Palin claims to be, he's still complicit in Council orders to shut down your investigation into Saren. If you were to push on that in media interviews, you could bring him down that way. She'd prefer that it be handled privately. In her view, there's no reason to further shake confidence in CSEC with the scandal. No reason to undermine what he accomplished with his service. He could agree to a changing of the guard, done honorably, retire to Paladin with a large pension. You can provide the private pressure and the public praise for stepping down, and the opportunity to serve yourself. He keeps his clan markings. Sparatus would be helpless to disagree without implicating himself. There would be separation between the executive and enforcement branches of the Citadel, and that would be for the greater good.
Garrus swallowed hard and tried to process. She was being dragged through all the mud possible, accent on downplaying the Geth and Saren's relationship to Reapers. She had her own career to consider, and she'd spent a lot of time trying to get him what she thought he wanted.
She's done a lot of research on all 3 potential paths. I don't know where she got it, but she's got dossiers on Palin, Sparatus, people who could influence Spectre assignment and training. I only skimmed it. She's promised a separate package for me focusing on counselors and advisors, and I'm looking forward to that. I don't have a week to read, and she gave me the main points verbally. She wants you to have options. I agree with her. I could offer you a job immediately, but it's unlikely you would retain as much Turian support if you accepted. She believes if you leverage the goodwill you've earned, your military and CSEC record, and your station in the hierarchy, you can represent the Turians who will no longer listen to the Council blindly, who deserve information and representation. The Spectre path would be more difficult than Executor. She believes it could waste political capital, result in your application being stalled, more treacherous and likely to get you killed, to silence you. It is certainly deadly enough in its own right. If you want that path, she and I would support and sponsor you, and I would do my best to oversee your candidacy. She'd love to see you as a counselor. That might still be possible if you jump from Executor to counselor. She has a plan for that as well. She's thought a lot about you, Vicarian.
In a flash of insight that he kept to himself, Garrus knew exactly where she'd gotten dossiers. She had code from Vigil that gave her control over the Citadel's tactical systems. Of course she'd be able to gain access to Citadel files. He'd always admired her hacking ability. As an engineer, she had never needed his technical assistance, just his rifle. She must be appreciating the irony that keeping her grounded on the Citadel gave her plenty of time to gather as much information as she wanted. He suddenly felt much, much better about her political twilight state. Once again, she changed in a blink from helpless, fey, and delicate human to someone to be feared. He asked impulsively, "How is she? I guess she doesn't want to be associated, but is she okay?"
Son, read all of these documents, and you let me know if you think there's a damn thing wrong with her.
Garrus grinned. "Yes, sir." Garrus spent days looking over her research, conclusions, carefully taped paths and strategies it would take for him to become Executor, Spectre, or Counselor. He swallowed a lot, stared a lot, and saw that it was not only possible, but probable with the way she framed arguments and outcomes. He swore a great deal. Not only that she had this information, but the content of that information, pressure points and weaknesses, personal and political, of the counselors. Alliances and agendas were identified and backlit, broken down to their purposes. He wanted so often to send her a message, but what was he going to say? "Thank you for violating all the laws in existence regarding privacy on my behalf? Thanks for the illegal dossiers, Shep?" No. No, he would not be sending that, or saying that. He got used to having his mouth go dry because his jaw had dropped and stayed that way for too long. Palin would be easy to remove from office. He wasn't a bad man, but he had definitely been influenced by the Council, and not only in the case of the Reapers. There were too many hints of case suppression and favoritism, too many sign-offs on the word of Counselor Sparatus against good investigative work of corruption. Garrus progressed from dry-mouthed awe to sharpened hunger for the kill. Damned right Turians deserve better. With this, he could get it for him, and for himself. Fully prepped with Shepard's findings, it took Garrus only 45 minutes of conversation with Palin before Palin conceded the title of Executor and set a date of orderly turnover of power to Garrus. Palin thanked Garrus for his discretion and personally apologized for his shortness of sight. He seemed to genuinely regret his bad calls and was willing, if not eager, to retire to Palaven, with hopes to see the Citadel recover. Garrus gave him a list of other CSEC agents who would be best advised to retire before the turnover was announced, giving several of the implicated old guard a chance to take an honorable pension rather than be drawn up with charges once new management took over. Palin agreed that as he had been complicit in their cooperation, he would take responsibility for convincing them to vacate. They both agreed on a surgical approach to this, rather than a bloody wrangle. Palin was true to his word. Garrus inherited a newly purged CSEC and was able to immediately begin crafting new policy, hiring requirements, and checks on power. A lot of old guard, beyond those advised to, retired. New recruits from Turian, human, and Asari applicants looking for new opportunities more than made up for it.
Shepard was cleared of wrongdoing, based on the ends justifying the means, Anderson's insistence, and the fact that the counselors were trying to wage a war against the truth and were slowly losing ground. The Normandy was repopulated with her crew, who had gratifyingly all stood behind her for the months of her suspended status. It pained her, more than she wanted to admit, to not add Garrus Vicarian to the roster, but he was now Executor Vicarian and no longer available. The fact that she'd gained 2 highly influential political footholds in Anderson and Garrus made her very happy professionally. But personally, the loss of Garrus was a slow seeping wound, and she was going to have to heal and give no sign. Going over the roster made it sting. Don't put blood in the water, Lal. Be happy for him. You worked hard. Yes, it was all fun, and you cackled, but you worked hard nevertheless, getting him where he is. She'd had so much fun with her Hacker's Paradise extended shore leave that getting back onto the ship was not as exciting as it should be in theory, but it was time to get back to work. She'd baked and hacked for months now, and it was the end of her involuntary vacation. She'd watched romance films, read romance novels, watched every cooking show, ordered from every takeout menu and bakery she could find, avoided all human and non-human contact except for Anderson. But there wouldn't be any more dancing or singing in the kitchen, holding up a spoon as an improvised microphone. She kept to tradition, relived the story of Saren with Hale, who was now stately, graying, and more likely to lean up against the console screen for the warmth and sleep. She took pictures of Fuzzy Cat Wall and smiled. It's going to be great, Hale. You'll see. I'll make you proud. When it was finally safe to come out and not wreck the new executor's glowing reputation, she found she really did want to talk to him. She was going to have to toughen back up, or at least look that way. She was nervous. But it was Garrus. She was nervous happy. Time to go be Shepard again. She sent Garrus an Omnitool alert. Congratulations on your new job.
Congratulations on your old job.
That went well. She smiled, and it was an hour before she saw again from him.
No, we're not doing that again. No message and run.
I didn't run.
You also didn't message. I want to see you before you go be all heroic.
Video chat?
Shepard, you're not funny. Dinner.
She choked slightly. Dinner? It's a meal, and you want to see him, and it'll be fun. No, you are not panicking. And do not call it a date. Idiot. Okay, dinner. Then she left it at that until an hour later when he prompted,
You did it again.
I did not. It was your turn.
You're not good at this conversation thing, are you?
No, not really.
Where would you like to have dinner?
You've lived on the Citadel longer than I have. You choose.
I have no idea what humans eat.
I have no idea what Turians eat.
I'll get back to you. This is not me running.
She covered her mouth. You are such a dork. You should not have watched Fleet and Flotilla 14 times. Gosh, it's the perfect background sound to hack and think about Turians. One Turian. Shut up. About a day later, he said,
Dinner is at my apartment. Turns out most of the restaurants that say they're good at Dextro and Levo tend to be liars, plus security, plus reporters. I'd rather talk than whisper. I'll have 2 separate places deliver, one's that's specialized. What would you like to eat? Your response will be timed.
She stared at the message and smiled. Alone together was so much better than a restaurant, and so much worse. Ask the chef what they recommend. I'll have that.
I should ask, do you prefer water, or is that just because it looks like vodka?
I like apple juice. Apples were easy, had grown abundantly on Mindor, one of Earth's crops that translated well to many climates. Relatively cheap, usually for children. What were the odds he knew Earth food customs? Low.
I'll get some.
He sent a time and an address. Tomorrow? Too soon. What to wear? She paced.
Shepard, say yes.
She still didn't answer.
Say yes now, or the apple juice has an unfortunate accident.
Yes. Leave the juice alone, you monster.
See you then.
Her panic ratcheted high. She'd spent the day shopping for something to wear, but didn't know a thing about fashion, didn't want to ask anybody, and really wanted something that covered every inch of skin as a high priority. She didn't want an asari dress, even though a lot of human women wore them. Too tight. Her coloring limited what she could wear anyway, so she went with casual and faux military green after not finding a single thing she liked and ending up with choosing this based on color. She was early because she was always early. She stood outside because she knew it was rude to knock early. Until the door opened.
Shepard, I have surveillance cameras out there. I'm going to pretend I haven't seen you pacing for 10 minutes. I should have done something, but I am not necessarily a nice person.
She jumped from being startled, and then she heard him laugh. I was early, He pulled the door further open.
Come in.
She dragged herself through the door on pure embarrassed willpower and was pulled into a Turian hug, setting her heart pounding. Instead of mashing her nose against his chest, she turned her head and breathed, relaxed, and thought he smelled really good.
Garrus was not even a little guilty for pressuring her to visit, so glad she was here, half expecting her to skitter away or fall to the floor to escape a hug. She smelled good. He tilted his head down, his crest on top of her hair, contemplating this strange person whose heart was beating through her ribs, the feel reverberating through his plates. He felt vaguely guilty about startling her, but... No, he wasn't. This was nice. He didn't let go. He said, "No surveillance here. Thank you."
She didn't have to ask for what, and she was so glad that she hadn't forced him a certain way that he seemed to want to be executor. You're welcome. I told you that you had a pocket specter.
He said into her hair, "And I told you that I'd hold you to that friend thing. From now on, you stay in touch. No protecting me. Let me protect myself."
She nodded. Okay. Promise. She was lying. She was bound to be in more trouble. She would not pull him into it. Ever. Protecting people was what she did, and he should know better than to ask. He let her go and led her to a simple kitchen table, food waiting in the oven, pulled out unceremoniously, apple juice ready. She smiled and sat down. They talked about Citadel politics and his new job. She listened gratefully, stupid happy to see him.
Garrus watched her. Her heartbeat slowed down. She listened and talked, and he, for the first time, really started considering a relationship. Which would, of course, be stupid and difficult, and he didn't care. She was leaving. He had work to do, but she would have shore leave. The first issue was that by Turian standards of politeness, a woman had to extend a definite interest before a male could do a damn thing about it. Getting her to show up to drink apple juice seemed to be the extent of her involvement. He was not going to be getting any signs of definite interest. So did he want to go full deviant, make a pass at his former commander? He once again regretted not asking for that bunk, but he still knew he was doing the right thing. He said, "I think my father might be brought to think that maybe human specters or one human specter is a good influence."
How is your family? She'd seen that Garrus's mother was in the early stages of Kripalis syndrome. It was a terrible disease. She would certainly admit to hacking everyone on the Citadel, but wasn't going to admit to paying particular attention to anybody connected to Garrus.
Thrilled, really. The Vicarian name in the news is good. My father's beyond proud, if slightly suspicious of my rise to executor so quickly. He's not stupid. My mother is aglow. My sister is proud of me.
She thought that his mother being aglow was so good. Spend time with her, Garrus. Keep her here. Take care of her. She told him. You've earned it.
You gave it to me on a platter.
You earned me giving it to you on a platter.
Shepard. Lal. Her heart started to hammer, and he could tell from here. That was a good sign. How much do you know about Turian culture?
She stalled out for a moment as she thought, everything I could find that I shouldn't have found. I'm safe because you can't do anything unless I do. I'm safe because Turians don't get involved with humans. Not dutiful Turian sons that are executors on the Citadel. But she said, not much. Turians aren't all that friendly toward humans.
He told her, I would like to change that. He thought, take that the way you want, Lal. I want to change that for you and for the Citadel.
And you have the chance to do it. We can do it, Garrus. We can create change.
I plan on it. He thought about it, thought that he did need to plan on it, figure out how. Whenever the Normandy is in port, you come see me. I am going to hold you to that friend thing. As part of his plan, he needed to figure out how to hold her.
She thought, with her hammering heart, do not say it's a date. She said, instead, scintillating there, Lal, okay. She wasn't lying.
Garrus smiled. It was a start. If he'd learned anything recently, it's that having a plan was a good thing. She'd taught him that. He'd keep apple juice stocked and learn something about human culture. See if he could turn that heart hammer into something more solid. For now she was worn out and stressed, and he didn't want to add to it. He had her promise, and now he knew that he could and should talk to her, insist. No more excuses about courage. She hadn't been avoiding him, had spent time turning theoretical drawbacks into advantages. He couldn't see how to turn all their disadvantages into assets yet, but he would. They finished dinner. He insisted on another hug. She blushed. It was enough, more than enough. She'd found a way for him. He'd find a way for them. He started planning for her next visit.